Today I'm speaking with Kelly Sullivan Walden. She's known as the Dream Doctor and is a dream interpreter. But today we're actually talking about her new book, which is called A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. So we're talking about how to come through crisis, and she shares a process to help us come out the other side triumphant. So enjoy. Well, hello, everyone, and welcome to the podcast for this week. This week, we're talking about a subject that I think most of us are familiar with, and that is some kind of crisis, some kind of adversity that has shown up in our life. And my special guest, which is Kelly Sullivan Walden today, we're going to be talking about how to not waste a crisis and how to use it as a way of transforming tragic into magic. So, Kelly, welcome to the podcast, darling. How are you?
I am so thrilled to be with you, Natalie. Thank you so much for having me. It's such an honor and deep pleasure.
I was very excited to record this podcast with you because even you have a new book that's coming out, is out, I should say. It's called A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste, which had me intrigued. But then I kind of researched you more, and you've written many books. You're known as the Dream Doctor, and so I think this book is like a little bit of a going down a different slant to what you're used to. So what was the motivation? What spoke to you about writing these kind of stories?
Well, there's so many ways I could answer that. I'll say that I think most of my work has been focused on the insights from sort of the mountaintop, like those moments of clarity, those moments where I can see clearly now the rain is gone and these are the answers, these are the insights. But over the years, I've discovered that some people would say, hey, tell them the story about the bougainvillea, or tell them about when you crashed in the wild animal park. And I noticed that people seem to learn more from me or get more from me when I told the whole story. Not
Right.
just, I just arrived on the mountaintop with Julie Andrews singing, "The fields are alive." It's like, oh wait, no, there was a lot more layers down there. And mostly this was my very personal project for myself. A lot of it took place over COVID, but really over the last 5 years. It was more of a therapeutic process for myself. I met an author, Aspen Mattis, who wrote a best-selling book called Girl in the Woods that was very, very candid about her rape and how it inspired her to walk the Pacific Crest Trail by herself. And I was so blown away by her candor. And I had this moment of feeling, by contrast, sort of not like a fraud, not like everything I'd said wasn't true, but I felt like, wow, I need to be more brave. I need to not just present all the sparkly stuff anymore, because what if that's actually giving the wrong message? What if that's giving the impression that it's all just been a cakewalk for me, and it hasn't been. My
Right.
greatest wisdom that I would not want to live without, I wouldn't want to live through again, but I wouldn't want to live without, has come from some pretty dark times. So this was my own personal project for myself. And I shared some of these stories with my husband, who knew me, who knew the stories, but he hadn't gotten the details. And he's like, this is really good. This is a different kind of writing than you've ever done. And I started sharing it with a few other people. They're like, can I share this with some friends of mine? Can I share this with my mom? Can I share this with my daughters? And I felt like there was a different buzz to these stories. It just has a different gravitas than I think the other work. So it doesn't disqualify what I've written before, but I think it gives some of the backstory. And I was telling some people these are my most humiliating stories. And my publisher kind of slapped my hand and said, Kelly, these are your most miraculous stories. These are the best stories. And I thought, oh, you're right. I'm grateful for these stories. And at this point, now that I'm talking to you at this exact moment, I actually love these stories and I'm grateful for them. And I wouldn't want to do without them. And I'm kind of proud of them. strangely, like scars on my body that I want to like tell, I want to show everybody like, hey, look what I got. Show me yours.
but that's actually right, because I think that when we as transformational leaders or teachers go, yeah, okay, this is, the 10-foot view that I understand from here, but this is how I got to that. And this is why I was led to understanding that. And we get to be authentic and raw, then it gives other women to have permission to do the same.
Yeah, it's so true. And I know I am most deeply moved by those stories. In fact, I'm kind of bored and annoyed if I just hear about all the bright and shiny, sparkling things, even though I'm glad those exist, but I kind of don't even want to know about them if I didn't know that the person knew the opposite. And I've definitely known the opposite. And I know I have some bright and sparkly elements of my life, but I feel like it must be a place that I've come to in myself. And I think the Me Too movement has been a big help in that world, knowing that so many stories are out, and I've got my own. I've got lots of my own. I have a whole other book written that's kind of a lot, even a bit darker. And hopefully maybe that'll come out later. I don't know who wants to publish it or not. It might be too dark, but it was good for me. Mostly I feel like if it's good for us, if it reaches us in that place that we need to be touched most deeply, then it might reach other people as well. And so it's kind of a selfish thing. And I also feel like it feels like a big relief, honestly, because I get to talk to somebody, I get to talk to you, who in the past I would have been like, oh God, only let her see the good things. Don't let her see any of those skeletons in my closet. So that means there's like a level of anxiety about don't look at what's back there. And right now it's kind of like I'm living in my closet and it's wide open and I'm inviting people in, and it's kind of a pretty closet. I kind of love it. And so I feel a lot less. I mean, even though I'm still pretty spastic, I don't have that same level of anxiety because there's a walk and a talk that sort of matches, whereas it really hadn't before. So,
right. Yeah. My trick that I used to do, like when I was in stress or in the story, when I recognize that I'm in it, I always imagine what it will be like when I'm speaking on stage to a group of people and I'm retelling the story.
Yeah.
And I go, no one wants to hear, I had this idea and then I did it and voila, here I am, Right.
And you
story.
can too. And why aren't you?
Yeah.
And shame on you for not doing it. Let me show you how easy it is.
Exactly. But people, when they understand that we all go through adversity, we all have crisis. And then when you go, but then I thought this or did this or, had this process to get out of it. And now here I am. And I know that you have a little process called Ogle that has helped you in your process as well. So let's talk a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I know Ogle is a funny word. People wouldn't think of it as something that they would go to as a transformation. Why couldn't you put gold? Or people were like, why don't you make it sparkler? I'm like, I don't know. Ogle's calling me. So to Ogle, the definition in the dictionary is to really look at something and to maybe even teeter on it being lecherous. So I don't mean it in that way. I mean it in the transformational way. Although somebody brought to my attention after the book came out, or like right in the final stages of editing, Kelly, you used to get ogled a lot. And now you're the ogler. You've turned the tables. And it's true. And so this is what I teach in dream work with regards to a nightmare. Instead of being the one being chased, turn around and do the chasing. Whatever that scary thing is that's haunting or hunting you, you become the hunter. You turn around and say, well, why are you hunting me? Why are you chasing me? What are you trying to tell me? What kind of gift do you want to give me? So in some way, I've gotten so used to, by working with dreams for myself and my clients, turning the tables on those scary things. I've practiced doing that in my waking dream as well. So Ogle is this 4-step process that I use to work with myself and my clients to be able to more quickly transform the tragic into magic, because it doesn't just transform into magic by itself. Maybe every once in a while, it will just automatically, like some of those caterpillars turn into butterflies without any effort, but it's not a guarantee. So this leverages that transformational process in our favor. So the O, if you're going through something difficult, so let me just ask everybody who's listening or watching this to think of something in your life that is offensive, something that you're bothered by. It could be something very small, like your neighbor's dog barking in the middle of the night, or it could be the biggest thing you could think of, the most devastating, difficult thing that you're grappling with. On whatever scale, pick that thing, and as I'm talking through this, map what I say onto what you're working through. Okay. O is what's offensive. So this is where you have permission to be offended and even be a victim, be in the pain, be in the woe is me. Why did they do this to me? This is unfair. Oh no, how dare they? So be in the what's offensive, and even examine what is offended. What part of you? Is it your ego? Is it your surviving that's the offended? What part of you is offended? Where do you feel it in your body? So get into that. Give yourself permission to do that in a journal, in the ear of a friend, to a therapist, somebody. Get it out of your body and put it out externally. Not to the person who triggered the offense.
Right.
Typically, that's another skill. That's the 2.0. We'll get to that later, hopefully. But the next, so once you've gotten all the out, I call it turning, like getting the hurls out, then you're going to turn it into a pearl. The G in Ogle stands for what's good about this. At first, you might want to smack me for even asking such a question, and that's okay. Don't do it, but you can think you want to do it. So what's good about this, or what might be good about this? What could be good? And this is where you got to get really creative. And one example I use is when my purse was stolen when I was in Colombia. My laptop was in there, my ID, my passport, my money, like everything I needed was in that bag, and it was gone. So what was good about that? I thought, nothing. After I did nothing, it was like, well, maybe I'm going to have a month being in Colombia and Guatemala. I don't have any technology to distract me from what I'm going to experience. So maybe there's something on purpose about this. Maybe there will be something good. And I thought about, actually, what is it? Mutant Messages Down Under. Did you ever read that book?
No.
About an Australian woman who traveled somewhere. And I don't know the whole story, but I know that I just know about it. But she loses everything at the beginning of her trip, and it causes her to have an entirely different journey. And a friend of mine had told me about her story, and I thought, maybe that will happen to me. So I didn't know what was good about it, but there was the what if this could be like that.
Right.
Then we moved to the L, the looking glass. And this is the hardest part of this whole thing. This is where we ask ourselves, how might I be just like that person or circumstance that was so offensive to me? So with regards to having my bag stolen, my purse stolen, how am I a thief? Have I ever stolen anything? Yeah, when I was younger, I was quite the little kleptomaniac. I mean, really tiny little stupid things, but there was a compulsive moment when I was about 11 and 12 when I thought it was cool to steal things. So I've done it. And where have I stolen from myself when I've been so overly focused on maybe social media or emails or whatever, when I've completely dismissed the important people and things happening right in front of me in real time? So where am I the thief? That's where things really turn around. And then it brings me to the E, which is elevate. Given all that we've just experienced in the O and the G and the L, what's offensive, what's good, and what's in the looking glass, what now can I do to elevate my situation, my circumstance, my consciousness, even if it's just the tiniest bit? So for me in that situation with regards to my purse being stolen, I thought, well, I'm going to do my best to be a little more present. And when I get back home and I get my laptop and I get my new phone, I'm going to turn them off when I'm in front of real people. And so I won't be the thief that steals my precious moments from me while I have them with the precious people in my life.
Right.
That's Ogle.
I like that. So I want to backtrack a little bit to the telling of the story, because I can find that sometimes we get stuck in the story.
Yes.
And we keep retelling the same story over and over and over again. And then it becomes part of who we are, right?
Our mind movie.
Right. Yes. And it keeps us tethered to that past event. And, I was, with a group of women on the weekend, and I was saying how, we may have something that happened to us in the past, and we tell the story initially from that point of pain.
Yes.
But then we keep continuing to say it the same way over and over and over again. But now we're at this place of evolution. And it's like, well, we know different. Like, we've had the 10-foot view, so we know different, but yet we're still telling it from that place of pain. Like, how do we, when you said, let's get it out, I'm thinking that getting out and getting it into the light of day must be really cathartic, because you can go, and how many times do I want to keep repeating this story?
Mm-hmm. It's so true. I think we could divide the human race into two categories. There's those of us who are all too willing to tell our pain stories and to tell those stories over and over again. And we get some social cachet from it because everyone says, oh, honey, I'm so sorry. And we get a lot of what they call in therapy, secondary gain from being the one who's bleeding all the time, who's going through that. There's a lot of attention that we get, and that leads to bonding, which can lead to intimacy, which is deep connection, which is what we all crave. So there's a reason a lot of us hold on to our victim stories, because there's a lot of cachet that can come from it. And then there's the other half of the human race that I would kind of identify with, that gets over it too quickly. I'm fine. Even though I'm bloody over here, I'm bruised, and I'm fine. I don't want anyone to see me as weak or sad. Because I got more social capital by being somebody that dug myself out, and I'm okay, I'm fine, and I create my reality. And yet what I was doing by too quickly shifting into that space was there was a lot of buried pain that would show up in my reality as anxiety or as nightmares. So we have to be aware enough to know what camp we fall in. If we're the ones that are like how I was, we need to find a safe place to get it out of our system. I think hurls to pearls, get the hurl all the way out, and then look for the pearl. And then we no longer have to hold on to the pain, except we can put it somewhere. I think that we should have a lovely shelf somewhere in our home that has all kinds of little trinkets that represents the pain that we've gone through and what we've earned, like our badges of honor, because we don't want to forget that we've been through all these wars. We don't want to just go completely numb about that. We want to honor those things. And I think if they know they're honored, I'm looking literally up at a shelf right here. Like, if they know that they're being honored, then it's kind of like it sort of doesn't have to live in our bodies anymore.
Yeah.
So I think we have to just know what camp we're in. And the Ogle process to me helps, because I feel safe giving myself permission to be in the O, be in what's offensive. If I know there's a G and an L and an E on the other side that's going to catch me. So I'm not afraid that I'm just going to keep cycloning and cycling in that pain.
Right.
There's a beginning there. There can be a beginning, middle, and end, but you're right. There can be a loop that becomes habitual. Human beings are habit makers. So we do need to be careful. It can be slippery, but I think having a system helps give us the confidence to know that we can get it out without it becoming who we are.
Yeah. I know when I was initially looking at the Ogle formula, and you said, how am I appearing in the looking glass? To me, how I interpreted that was like, all right, what of my patterns or programs are showing up? here.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Because sometimes we can have events show up that are catalyzing for us.
Yes.
You know, that's like they show up and it's like, oh, this is, and even though you've got to experience it in the moment, but afterwards it's like, okay, well, how has my programs, or why did I react in this way? You know, and is that something I can look at that's a little deeper that, you know, can help me to, you know, expand and evolve a little bit further, if you know what I mean.
Oh, I love that. Well, this is where dream work comes in handy, because from a dream work perspective, everyone and everything in our dream is an aspect of ourselves. So when we get used to seeing our dreams that way, or interpreting our dreams that way, then it's a little bit easier to see our waking reality, which is also a dream, just a different kind,
Right.
from that same perspective. So how am I this? How am I that pattern? How am I the thief? How am I also the one who keeps getting robbed? How am I the one that keeps putting my valuables and just being so trusting by putting my big, fat, shiny purse on top of my luggage like a big cherry on a big cake, and then
Come and get
around,
me.
hey, what's all this? What me? Like, what? How does this kid? Oh my God. Yeah. So how am I all of these things? How is all of it a story that is mine? And if it's recurring, repetitive, just like a recurring dream, then it's the universe's way of kind of showing us our own Groundhog's Day movie and saying, this is yours, this is yours, this is yours, this is what is yours to change. And even if we just change it a little bit, I like to think of this in Spanish. I do a lot of work in Teotihuacan, bringing people on sacred pilgrimages there. And instead of saying shaman in Teotihuacan, they call it the Nawal. And I like the word play of no wall, because eventually I think we're meant to, as we evolve, we're meant to take each brick by brick out of our wall and have no wall that separates us from each other, from God, the universe, all the good things. But if we have a big brick wall and we're aware of it, yay, we're aware of it. And then in order to take down a big wall, we actually don't have to crush the whole thing. We can just take out one little brick. If we take one brick out of a giant wall, eventually the whole thing falls off balance and eventually will fall out. So all we have to do is take one little pattern, one little nightmare, one little recurring thing that keeps showing up for us, and transform that. And if we just do that one thing, the rest of the wall eventually will come falling down.
Because how we do one thing is how we do everything.
It's exactly. So really, there really is only one brick.
That's right. There you have it. There's the secret. If you can figure out what that bloody brick is, then you're golden.
Exactly. It's a golden brick in disguise.
That's right. So I would really love it if you could share one of the stories that you share in the book. Because I think that when we can look at something that was harrowing and traumatic and so forth in the moment, but then we can tell it from a place where we're no longer emotionally connected or tethered to it. And it becomes more about, I don't know whether it's humorous, but definitely we have a bit of brevity about how we can do it. And I think that's really where we want to end up with a lot of the stories that we repeat in our lives,
Exactly. Oh gosh, which one do I pick? Do I go light or do I go heavy? Natalie, what do you think?
I think we could go light. We could go light today.
This is a relatively light, even though it might not sound like it. This is the first story in the book. I call it Amor Fati. And the basic scenario is I'm in Milan, Italy with my husband, and we are coming out of 6-week-long journey. I'd been facilitating workshops. He'd been filming a flamenco fusion album in Spain and in Italy and filming some music videos. So we had a ton of equipment, a ton of heavy, heavy stuff. And it was our very last night in Italy, and we were going to stay at a hotel that was near the airport. So we were all good to go. And we load up on this train, and that took quite a bit to get all of our stuff onto this train. And I'm looking at the map and looking up at the signs, and I know where I'm supposed to exit, and everyone is doing their thing. And I noticed this very kind of creepy, sorry to just be kind of crass, but he was kind of a creepy looking guy that was kind of had this sort of ogling, sort of lecherous kind of thing. And he reminded me of the character Gru in Despicable Me.
Right.
With like the dark circles under the eyes, kind of long pointy nose and kind of hunched, and just, he's kind of scary. So I just noticed myself not looking at him, like, let me look over here. Let me look everywhere but there. Like, when are we going to get off this darn train? I just don't want to see him anymore. It was a little freaky. Anyway, I hear in broken Italian, blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, was that the name of our stop? And then the door opens and then promptly closes. And I realize that was our stop. Oh my God. But the train is off onto the next thing. And I say in my broken Italian hybrid Spanish, did we lose our stop? And they were like, yeah, that was it. We'll get off at the next one. I'm like, okay, we'll just get off at the next stop. No big deal. We have 5,000 tons of baggage, but whatever, we're fine. We'll just get off and turn around. But the train kept going and going and going. And the next stop wasn't for at least a half an hour. So fine, we finally get off the train. We're on the platform. And as soon as we get off, the train goes, all of a sudden lights start going out in the distance, so we're on this little, and then even the depot in front of us, I see this little man with his little lunch pail turn off all the lights as he gets into his little car. And I'm like, wait, when's the next train? And he's like, just like, so I sit with Dana. I'm like, I don't think there's another train. And on our cell phones, it's a dead zone. There's no cell reception. We can't call an Uber. We can't call anyone to come get us. So we're not traveling light here. Like, what are we gonna do? So I don't know. I started busting out in Janis Joplin's Busted Flat in Baton Rouge, waiting for a train. And Dana didn't think it was funny, but I did. Just so out of nowhere, I hear footsteps walking toward us. And as he gets closer, I see that it is the Despicable Me guy, Gru, with that face. And I'm like, oh, Jesus, anybody but him. And he asks if we need a ride. And I tell Dana, he wants to know if we need a ride. And Dana says, no. And I whisper to Dana, I'm like, Dana, we don't have a lot of options here. We're either gonna die by just being here and somebody else will come, or we'll die at the hands of someone we now know. So let's, like, the lesser of the two evils. So I say, okay, thank you. So he picks up our bags like it's nothing, like they're a bunch of feathers. And he walks us up and down the steps to his hearse. His hearse. He had a hearse, not a car, but a hearse. And I'm like, this is nice. So he puts our luggage back where there once was a dead body, and we're in the car, and finally, as we start to drive, I start to get cell reception. So I give him the directions to our hotel, and I'm like, turn right. He turns left. And then it starts to redirect, and he gets really annoyed with the chirping of my, and I'm like, oh my God, where is he taking us? And I'm kind of like, I don't know, we're going to die. And I start praying. I start doing that thing where I'm like, I'll do whatever you want me to do. I'll be good. I'll be so good. Please.
I'll go to church. I'll do whatever it takes.
Church. I'll stop shoplifting. No, I haven't done it in 25 years. I'll be good. And I'm like, I'm calling on all my angels, all Dana's angels, all anyone's angels, anyone, help. And I remember in a CSI episode that I had watched before, if a killer knows your name, they're less apt to kill you. So I said, by the way, I'm Kelly and this is Dana. What's your name? He says, Fatih. His name is Fatih. I'm like, hi, Fatih. And my broken whatever. Okay, I didn't seem to cheer him up or make him any nicer. But so he's driving us to wherever the heck we're going. And next thing I know, we end up right smack in front of the hotel that is supposed to be our hotel. There's a bellman out in front. And he said, Kelly and Dana, we've been expecting. And I'm like, holy God. He took us right to our hotel. Oh my God. We're not dead. So Dana gets out of the car. I'm like, I reach into my pocket to give him money. And then he hits the steering wheel. No. And he was so angry that I was going to give him money. And I'm like, sorry. don't kill me now. Can we treat you to dinner to thank you? And he said, yes. He became like this warm, like sweet smile came over his face. So I say, okay, well, meet us in the restaurant. We're going to put our bags up and we'll meet you downstairs. So Dana and I get to our hotel room and we're both shaking, crying. Oh my God, splashing water on. Okay. Oh my God. Okay, we're good. So we meet him downstairs and he's sitting there in the middle of this lovely restaurant. We order food and drink and we have this beautiful night. And he was just this delightful being. Until the very end, when I said something about how much I love the Romance languages and how boring English is, and he hits the table. No, English is the best language. It is the language of freedom. You are spoiled. And I'm like, where did this perfect English come from? Wait a minute. So basically how I ogled all of this in the end was, what was offensive was the train wasn't more clearly marked and we didn't get out where we were supposed to. It was very scary to be able to, and to be left out and to have no recourse and to feel so abandoned. What was good about it was that we didn't die in the end. So we were grateful to be alive. And I did end up discovering that there was this man who I had profiled incorrectly. He was an angel in disguise. And I ended up being the creep. I ended up being the despicable. Who was despicable? It was me. It made for one of our favorite stories from that journey. The looking glass was I was thinking about, like, how am I so one track focused on the things that I'm so focused on that I don't leave the door of my heart open long enough to really be present to what's going on? How am I too quick to close and shut and just move on down the track of what I need to do? So how am I the one that cuts myself off from those things? How am I the despicable one? And ultimately, in the E for elevate, I discovered the word Fatih. His name means fate, and there's a Stoic a teaching from the Stoics, amor fati, which means love your fate. It means, yes, you're going to go through things. You're going to go through difficult things, but your life is what is yours to love. And to wish it away, to wish it were different, to wish you had somebody else's is completely just an insult to the life that is yours. Yours is like all the difficulties and the beautiful aspects of your life. It's yours to love, yours to make the most of. So your job is to love your fate, and the difficulties included. So I feel like that became the opening story for my book, because it's so much about, doesn't mean that we don't sometimes have good instincts. It doesn't mean that it's not okay sometimes to profile people, because that's what our limbic brain does. It's there for our survival. So we're going to do it. But sometimes we are dead wrong. And it's about questioning those things. And when life does go off the rails, to recognize, what if this is ours? What if this is ours to own and to not wish away and to not squander? It's like, that's why I don't waste a crisis. Crisis is a terrible thing to waste, because this is where the deep mud is that the lotus grows from. This is, and it's ours. So why would we want to give it away? These are our lottery tickets that are just for us with our name on it. So that's my Amor Fati story.
What a lovely note to finish on. So the name of Kelly's book is A Crisis is a Terrible Thing to Waste. And I'm assuming it at all bookstores and Amazon and so forth. And I encourage you to order that and to read that, because like I was saying in the beginning of the podcast, I often find that when I'm also sharing my personal journey and sharing from a place of, of a raw and authentic place, that it gives us permission to acknowledge our own stories, and to maybe share that and to go, oh, I'm not the only person that went through that. So all this shame and guilt that I have around this, I don't have to worry about that anymore, because I'm not the only one.
Exactly. And, yeah. And we all know shame these days. It's a time to put shame really in the light, so that it stops having the power over us, and to own our fate, to own our stories, to love our fate, amor fati. Then we don't have any shame in our game. And isn't that, I think we're more apt to then create all those wonderful things, to create the mind movies that are of the things that are aspirational, but we don't have one foot on the gas and one foot on the brake. It's like we could just have both feet on the gas. I don't know about that, but at least one foot solidly on the gas. We can go and know that we don't need to sabotage ourselves, because there's nothing in the closet that we are worried that anyone's going to find out.
Exactly. Well, Kelly, thank you so much, darling. It has been fantastic chatting with you today, and congratulations on the book.
Thank you so much, Natalie, and thank you for the beautiful work you do with the mind movies and just the being that you are. You are one that walks your talk, and you truly glow, and I'm grateful to get to meet you and then to be meeting you in person next month.
Yeah.
So excited.